25 years into the 21st century, and gaming has already produced some of the most profound, most breathtaking, and most culturally significant entertainment experiences in human history. We're not just talking about good games. We're talking about works of art that changed the medium forever. Games that made people cry, think differently, and see the world through completely new eyes. Games that proved beyond any argument that this is not just a hobby. This is one of the most powerful storytelling mediums ever created. The 21st century has given us masterpieces that rival the greatest films, the greatest novels, and the greatest works of art ever made. And today, we're honoring the very best of them. These are the greatest video game masterpieces of the 21st century, the titles that didn't just define gaming, they defined a generation. Let's get into it.
Every time you die in Hades, the story moves forward. That is the genius of what Supergiant built. You play as Zagreus, the son of Hades himself, trying to escape the underworld. And each failed run isn't a setback. It's a chapter. The conversations that deepen, the relationships that evolve, the secrets that unravel, all of it happens through the gameplay loop itself. Dying is literally part of the narrative. It scored 93 on Metacritic and became one of the most replayable games ever made. The combat is fast, fluid, and wildly varied. Boons from the Olympian gods change your entire playstyle each run. Supergiant proved with Hades that roguelikes were never niche. They just needed the right story wrapped around them. This is that story. If you have not played Hades, stop what you're doing.
From Software stripped away every safety net they'd ever offered and built Sekiro around a single mechanic, the parry. No character builds, no spat tweaking, no rolling your way out of danger. You stand in front of your enemy, blade to blade, and you match their rhythm or you die, and you will die. Over and over. But every death teaches you something precise. Every failed parry gets you one moment closer to the click. When you finally break a boss's posture after 30 attempts, the rush is unlike almost anything else gaming has to offer. It won Game of the Year 2019 at the Game Awards. The story, a shinobi's desperate mission to protect his young lord in feudal Japan, is told with quiet, devastating restraint. Sekiro is the most uncompromising masterpiece From Software has ever made. Pure, demanding artistry. Persona 5 Royal is the highest-rated game of 2020, sitting at 95 on Metacritic, and every single point is earned. You play as a high school student in Tokyo, leading a secret life as a phantom thief, breaking into the corrupted minds of abusive adults, and literally stealing their desire to do evil. The style alone justifies the price. The menus, the music, the UI design, it is one of the most aesthetically distinct games ever made. But underneath the surface is a story about rebellion, injustice, and chosen family that hits harder the older you are when you play it. Royal added new characters, new story content, and an entire new semester that changed how you read the whole experience. Persona 5 was already beloved before this version. Royal made it undeniable. This is the game that brought Japanese RPGs to a global mainstream audience and proved they belong at the very top table.
How do you follow up one of the greatest games ever made? If you are Nintendo, you keep the same world and then you break it open in every direction. Tears of the Kingdom gives you Ultra Hand, an ability to fuse almost anything to anything, and Ascend, which lets you phase upward through solid ceilings. These aren't gimmicks, they are the entire game. Players built flying machines, catapults, hovercrafts, things Nintendo never programmed, but the engine makes possible. Sky Islands above Hyrule and gloom-drenched depths below the surface added two entirely new dimensions to an already enormous map. This is not a DLC. It is not a remaster. It is a completely different creative vision built on familiar bones. That it stands alongside Breath of the Wild rather than beneath it is one of the most remarkable achievements in Nintendo's history. Before Breath of the Wild,
open-world games told you where to go. After it, the genre had to start over from scratch. Nintendo looked at over 30 years of Zelda design and threw out every single rule. You can go anywhere from the very first minute, climb any surface, cook food by holding ingredients near open flame, glide from mountaintops onto moving enemies, freeze rivers solid to cross them. The physics and chemistry systems interact in ways even the developers did not fully predict, and players have been discovering new combinations for years since launch. It launched alongside the Nintendo Switch in 2017 and scored 97 on Metacritic, tied for the highest score of the entire decade. It wasn't just a great Zelda game, it was a statement about what video games are allowed to be. Everything that came after exists in its shadow.
No game in history has divided players and unified critics at the same time quite like The Last of Us Part 2. Naughty Dog made a sequel that deliberately dismantles what you loved about the first game, forces you into a perspective you resist, and then slowly, painfully makes you understand it. It's uncomfortable. It's brutal. At times, it is almost too much, and that is completely the point. It scored 93 on Metacritic and swept Game of the Year at almost every major ceremony in 2020. Enemies call each other by name and react to watching friends die in front of them. No game has depicted violence and its consequences with this level of unflinching honesty. You will not enjoy every moment of it. You will never forget a single one.
Everyone knew Kratos, the rage-fueled Greek god-killer who tore Olympus apart with his bare hands. Then, in 2018, Santa Monica Studio placed a child beside him and changed everything. God of War is one of the boldest reinventions in gaming history, taking a franchise built on pure spectacle and rebuilding it around grief, fatherhood, and the weight of legacy. Kratos and his son Atreus travel through Norse mythology in a single unbroken camera shot. The whole game. No cuts, no loading screens breaking the tension. It scored 94 on Metacritic, won a cascade of Game of the Year awards, and proved that action games can carry the emotional depth of prestige television. The relationship between Kratos and Atreus is so carefully written that it genuinely hurts to watch it tested. That is the power of what Santa Monica built here. Red Dead Redemption 2 took 8 years to make, and you can feel every single one of those years in every frame. Rockstar built a world so alive that animals have migration patterns, weather systems change how NPCs dress, and the campfire your gang gathers around actually means something emotionally. You play as Arthur Morgan, an outlaw slowly reckoning with the choices he's made, and the writing elevated Arthur into one of the most beloved characters in gaming history. This is the highest-rated game on both PlayStation 4 and Xbox One ever. It sold over 63 million copies. The epilogue alone made grown adults sob into their controllers. People talk about games as art. Red Dead Redemption 2 is the strongest argument that industry has ever made. Quite simply, nothing else has come close to doing what this game does.
People still talk about The Witcher 3's side quests, not the main story, the side quests. The Bloody Baron questline alone is more emotionally complex than most games' entire narratives. That's what CD Projekt Red was operating at in 2015, when they shipped what many consider the greatest open-world RPG ever made. You play as Geralt of Rivia, a monster hunter navigating a war-torn continent, searching for his missing adopted daughter. Every village has a story. Every notice board leads somewhere worth going. And 2 years after launch, they shipped Blood and Wine, an expansion so good it would have been a standalone hit. Over a decade later, people are still installing this game for the first time. The next-gen upgrade made it look jaw-dropping all over again. The Witcher 3 didn't just set a bar for open-world RPGs. It built the bar, then quietly built a second one above it. What Larian Studios did with Baldur's Gate 3 should not have been possible. Over 17,000 different endings. A story that genuinely reacts to every single choice you make. Party members who remember what you did 3 acts ago. companions so well written that players started canceling real-life plans to spend more time with them. And that is not an exaggeration. This is a full Dungeons & Dragons campaign, the best one ever written, playable as a video game. It won Game of the Year 2023 and took home 5 BAFTA awards in 2024. The concurrent player count on PC hit nearly 1 million for a traditional RPG. That is a genre that was supposed to be niche. Larian didn't just revive the classic RPG, they made it the most exciting genre in all of gaming. Baldur's Gate 3 reset the standard for what an RPG is allowed to be, and everyone else is still catching up.
George R.R. Martin and Hidetaka Miyazaki walked into a room together, and what came out was Elden Ring, a game that made the entire open-world genre feel outdated overnight. You're dropped into the lands between with almost zero guidance, and the world doesn't wait for you to catch up. Every fog wall hides something that will end you. Every site of grace feels earned. What From Software pulled off is almost impossible to explain. They took the brutal, punishing Souls formula and opened it up into one of the most awe-inspiring open worlds ever built. No map markers screaming at you, no waypoints babysitting you. Just horizon, mystery, and the constant feeling that something enormous is just over that hill. It won Game of the Year 2022. It sold over 25 million copies. And the Shadow of the Erdtree DLC? Arguably the greatest expansion ever shipped for any game. Elden Ring might just be the defining game of the entire 2020s. Picture this. Once a year, a goddess called the Paintress wakes up and writes a number on a monolith. And everyone alive who is that age? They disintegrate, disappear, gone forever. That's the world of Clair Obscur Expedition 33, a French indie RPG that dropped in April 2025 and absolutely blindsided everyone. No one saw this coming. A small studio in France, their very first game, and they deliver what many are calling the best RPG of the generation. The combat is turn-based, but don't let that fool you. You're dodging, parrying, and counterattacking in real time. Every single battle demands your full attention. Voiced by Charlie Cox, Ben Starr, and Jennifer English, who took home Best Performance at the Game Awards 2025, this cast hits on a level you don't expect from a debut title. The story will break you. It swept 8 awards at the Game Awards 2025, including Game of the Year. 8 awards. First game. That simply does not happen. This isn't just a great game. It's a once-in-a-decade moment. Naughty Dog spent years building Nathan Drake into one of gaming's most beloved characters, and then Uncharted 4 had the courage to let him grow old. This isn't another treasure hunt. It's a story about who you were at 25 and who you're trying to be at 40. Sam Drake's return pulls Nate back into a world he promised to leave behind, and the tension of that broken promise runs through every scene. At launch, the graphics set a new benchmark for console hardware. Rope physics, mud deformation, facial animation mid-conversation. Nothing looked like it. Scored 93 on Metacritic and called the ultimate video game adventure by critics at the time. The Madagascar car chase sequence alone is worth the price of entry. As a farewell to an era of Naughty Dog storytelling, it is very nearly perfect.
Hideo Kojima's final game for Konami is also the deepest stealth sandbox ever built. Metal Gear Solid 5, The Phantom Pain, gives you open Afghanistan and Angola, a private military operation to construct, and the freedom to approach every mission however you want. Extract enemies and recruit them. Neutralize targets with tranquilizer darts or an airstrike. Attach a Fulton balloon to a tank and watch it float into the sky. Every objective is a puzzle with dozens of valid solutions. It scored 93 on Metacritic across platforms. But underneath that extraordinary sandbox is something darker. A story about revenge, identity, and the psychological cost of becoming a weapon. The relationship between Big Boss and Venom Snake cuts quietly and deeply once you understand what the game is really saying. Years later, nothing in stealth gaming has matched it system for system. Ghost of Tsushima is what happens when a Western studio falls deeply in love with Japanese cinema and refuses to make anything less than a love letter. Sucker Punch built a samurai game so visually stunning it ships with a Kurosawa mode, black and white, film grain, wind, that turns it into a living Akira Kurosawa film. The island of Tsushima is one of the most beautiful open worlds ever rendered. Golden grass fields, white blossom forests, crimson maple groves, each biome handcrafted to be a painting worth staring at. Jin Sakai's story about honor, sacrifice, and the cost of becoming something your ancestors wouldn't recognize is genuinely affecting. And the Legends cooperative mode extended what was already a great game into something the community played for years after launch. Ghost of Tsushima is a triumph of atmosphere and artistic ambition.